All right, here we go. Our next episode of Descent Act 2, the Betrayer's War. We're doing the Vampire here. Super easy tutorial, nothing too crazy. It shouldn't be too hard. First off, I want to thank all my YouTube members for supporting the channel, as always, because you guys are absolutely amazing. Can't thank you guys enough for all of your contributions and supporting the channel over the years. If this is your first time at the channel, hit that subscribe button. Check us out on Instagram at nerd.nights. Hit that bell button, the thumbs up. Leave a comment on things you would like to see. Check out our membership program. It's pretty cool stuff. Without further ado, let's go. Alright, the first thing we are going to do is mix our skin tone together. And we're going to do a fair portion of each of Contrast Medium, the Apothecary Blight, I think what it was. You'll see here in a second if you haven't already seen it. And Carroburg Crimson. Don't overpower it with the red, but you want enough that you can notice that there is red in there. And then we're going to make sure that our miniature is scraped off and primed in a basic white. Now with this, what we just made, we're going to put this all over our skin. There's only two areas, which are the hands and the face. Make sure we get enough of that paint into the recesses where you can see its eyes and all of the actual lines of the face and the hands. I'm not going to do too much, and it's going to turn out real well because that white is going to stick through. Now this card art is very blasé, I guess you could say. A lot of the art on these miniatures for the Act 2 are not that great, but it's not terrible. So we're going to use a lot of contrast paints over that white to speed this up, since we have 4 of these things we have to do. So on the rim of our miniature, we're going to use some Magos Purple, and then on the underside of our miniature, we're going to use some of this as well. For the top of our cape, we're going to use some Shyish Purple. We're also going to use this on the actual drab or the wardrobe that our vampire is wearing. Purple is a very vampire color, and I felt it was necessary to paint the vampire in this color. It is now August 2nd, and we are only 2 months away from the Halloween time, so my favorite time of the year, so I thoroughly enjoyed painting this miniature, and it turned out pretty well. To break up the contrast colors just a little bit, we're going to use some Basilicanum Grey on those gauntlet areas. And for the metal portions, we're going to use some Iron Warriors. Now don't get it on the white right there. And again, as you can tell, I got some of that wash on the white area. We're going to clean that up here in a little bit. Not a big deal. For our vampire's hair, we're going to use some Black Legion. And it wouldn't be a vampire without some jet black hair. For the belt and part of the sword on the vampire's hilt, we're We're going to use some Cygor Brown. Now I didn't show it because I forgot to film it, but I cleaned up all of our white areas with some basic white. That includes the parts around the hands of the vampire and obviously the fur coat and the shirt that our vampires got going. I cleaned up with some white, and then we're going to use some of this Soulblight Grey on there to make it stand out just a little bit, get a gray tone to it. For all of our gold areas on the sword, there's 4 specific areas. You have the end cap, the hilt of our sword. There's a piece in the middle that's hard to see. It's a little diamond area, and then you have the end as well that is all in gold. So we're going to use some of that Retributor Armour on that. For the necklace that is on our vampire, with the chain coming down, we're going to go back to our Iron Warriors. If you don't want to use this, you can use Leadbelcher. It's up to you, but this is the colors I'm sticking with. And we're only using 1 wash on this entire miniature, and it's just on our gold areas. We're going to use some Reikland Fleshshade. You could also use some very watered down Cygor Brown if you would like to use that, or one of the flesh tones from the contrast paint if you want to give it a little different shade to it. Now to speed this process up, we are going to use a series of dry brushes, just a couple. And we're going to start with a little Emperor's Children on the undercoat. Don't worry about the part on the skirt area or the coat jacket. It's in pink. We're going to clean that up here in a little bit with a different color. For the top portion of our cape, we're going to use some Naggaroth Night on a dry brush. Be very careful when you're doing this. It's obviously pretty easy to overbrush and get it onto areas that you don't want to get it on. So just be a little careful on that and take your time. For the bottom portion of our vampire's wardrobe, we're going to use some Genestealer Purple on there just to give it a little bit of contrast color. Might look a little bit too purplish once it gets on there, but once it dries, it makes it stand out really well. Now these little rivets all over our vampire, we're going to use some Warpfiend Grey. You can also use this as a highlight on the purple areas as well, very thin down. It'll make it stand out just a little bit more. I did not do that for this because literally I'm trying to get through all of them at once, so just something I did not do. For all of our metal areas, to include the necklace and the gauntlets for our vampire, we're going to use some basic Leadbelcher. Now you had the Iron Warrior's undertone on it, and we never put any wash on it, which you really don't need to, but you're just going to use some Leadbelcher to go over the top of it, let that dark silver just rest there. And to brighten up our gold areas, we're just going to use some Retributor Armour again. And for the white, we're going to use this on all of our fingernails of our vampire, the teeth, and all of our white areas on the fur coat and the shirt that our vampire is wearing. This probably takes the most time out of all of it because you got to get those individual fur pieces without getting into the recesses. You could do a dry brush, but make sure you use a very small brush on that. Don't go overboard with it. For the mouth, we're going to use just a little bit of Volupus PInk. Be careful when you're doing this. You don't want to get it on the teeth at all. And for our eyes, we're going to put just a little dab of Druchi Violet in that eye socket. If you notice from the card art, it doesn't really have any eyes. So we're going to use some Druchi Violet followed by some Doomfire Magenta in the eyeballs to give it that purple pinkish look. Moving on to the base, we're going to go with some Mechanicus Standard Grey on all of the rocks on the bottom of our miniature. It's going to be real basic. Next, we're going to use some Nulin Oil all over all of our rocks and let that sit there. Make sure it's completely dry. You can use a blow dryer if you want. I just let it naturally dry and worked on something else while this was going. Next, we're going to take another dry brush and use some Dawnstone all over this area. Now, you can do this on the legs as well if you want to put a little dry brush on there, on the feet, or the boots I should say, but you don't have to. This is going to be followed up by a quick dry brush of Adminstratum Grey to make those rocks really pop out and look really nice. Finally, your favorite part of painting this miniature, because it means we're done, is some Abaddon Black along the rim. You can do a different color if you want, but if you've been watching this channel, you know I like to do it in black. And that's it. And that thing turned out pretty good. Specifically the skin. I was real happy with the skin. I think that was the focal point and the really selling point of this miniature for me is that wash we created. So I want to say thank you to everyone watching this episode, supporting the channel. If you're a follower, thank you for following. If you're a YouTube member, you're amazing. If you're not either of those, think about it. Or not. It's up to you. But until next time, see you on the next one. Paint on.